Hey up everybody and welcome back. Right, we're going to obviously carry on with the Enfield today, but I had a lot of comments, mostly about the same thing. Well, I suppose to a certain extent the entire episode was about one thing, so I want to answer a few of those comments. I replied to most of them, but a lot of them I thought I would give you a little bit more in-depth answer. So before we start on that, I want to sort of what should we call it? I suppose you could say a mission statement. A lot of you have followed me for several years, and you know that basically what I like to do is make you be just a friend who's in the workshop. I'm not really into making videos as such. I just video what I do, and you know, you sort of take it or leave it. But I'm 68, and when I was a lad, my dad had bikes, only bikes. We didn't have a car till I was about, I don't know, 13, 14, something like that. Maybe not quite that old, but about 12. Anyway, the thing I'm trying to say is, I was with motorbikes all of my childhood, and my dad wasn't very mechanical, so he always used to take me to a repair place. So this was in the late 50s, right through the 50s. I was born in 51, and into the early 60s. And I used to go with him, and I got to know the guy, and I saw the way they worked. And they worked on everything. There would be BSAs in. Dad liked his A10s, his Gold Flash, and there'd be matchlesses, and there'd be Enfields, and all sorts of things. But what you wouldn't see there are any special tools. You certainly wouldn't see a torque wrench or anything like that. They managed without, and they did the jobs perfectly well. And that's often what I like to try and show here. I've got a mill and a lathe and all the rest of it and all sorts of stuff, but whenever possible I like to show you things the way they were done and the way you can do them. So we come to some of the things. Now, the other thing I'd like to mention is that we're talking about sorry about that, lorry going past. We're talking about old engines. This one is a design from the 40s. It was built in the 50s. They weren't CNC'd. They were very often more a case of relative sizes than actual sizes. Things were made to fit. So don't get carried away to half thous. And now we're going to come to the bits and pieces. Alright, first of all, that is what passes as the oil seal. That's the cork seal that would go inside the cases. You remember you put a washer oh, pardon me. We put a washer in, and then the cases that had that little step in it, a small washer would go in that, then this would fit into that step, then a bigger washer would go on, then the bearing would go on. So that was the seal. So I'm glad we're putting an outside proper spring-lipped oil seal in. Okay, so the big thing was the crank. First of all, I had questions about whether it would move again. As you see, the crank pin's held in both sides by a big nut, and then there's a lock screw. Not a lock washer or anything like that. There's actually a big screw that the head bears directly on the flat of the nut. That's not going to come apart. The other thing, I don't know what the figure is for this, but I seem to remember that the matchless heavyweights, the 350s and 500s, the crank pin nut, there was a torque figure for it, and it was something like £250, because I had to go and find someone with a torque wrench big enough. Even Steam Shop didn't have one. In fact, what we ended up doing was we put a socket on it with like a 2-foot bar on, and then on the end of the 2-foot bar we had a spring balance, and we pulled that until it was what, 125 pounds on the spring balance, and 2 feet long gave us 250 foot-pounds. So anyway, so that is really robust. The flywheels are really robust. Now, one chap said that I didn't seem to hit them very hard with this, and you don't have to hit them too hard with this, because this is a piece of solid brass. Now, it was also mentioned using a lead hammer. Now, look at this lead hammer that I use generally on the lathe for bumping things. You see how it's deformed? When you're moving these flywheels, you want to do it with an impact. That does not give you an impact. Some places will use a lead or an aluminium big chunk. You want something soft that's not going to damage the edges, but you've really got to bang it on them. This thing, because it's solid, even more so than a hammer, gains so much inertia when I try to swing it that when I hit there, good old Newton's laws of motion, all of that goes into this, boom, like that. So you don't need to really pound it too hard if you've got a big, heavy, dense enough item to hit it with. Alright, what else? It was mentioned about me knocking the case on here instead of pulling it on. And Andreas said they should be pulled on, and he's right, but should is a big word, and I come back to that 1950s workshop. When this thing is trued up and ready, it is not going to move with that little bit of tapping with the plastic mallet to get that down. It really isn't. And all these things are interlinked. It comes back to the thing was, you know, I got this to 2 thou and 4 thou. The crank surface probably isn't round enough to give me anything better than that anyway. And these things weren't made to those tolerances. Alright, so don't worry about it. I've been doing this for 50 years. I've never had an engine blow up. I won't say I'm perfect, but it comes down to something that I often have arguments with people about. It works. I know I'm waffling on again, but I'll give you an example. I know a chap who wanted to build a trials bike, and he repaired British bikes, so I said you should have a British one. So he decided to build a Beezer like mine, and he phoned me up about the gearing, and I told him what size sprockets to use, and he was adamant that that couldn't be right because his gear program, his little computer program for working out gearing, gave him a different rear wheel sprocket size. And I could not get it across to him that, look, I don't care what your computer says, I've actually built one of these. I've put different size sprockets on, and this is the size that works. So there you go, my little rant, a little bit like bronze welding and brazing. But anyway, as I say, don't worry, everything will come out fine in the end. But having said that, really I do appreciate the comments. And what I liked this time was I noticed on one of them several people commented to each other. The thread sort of got longer. That's what I like. We're a family. Bit dysfunctional, but a family. So let's get round and put the bottom half of this motor in. Now before we put the engine in, I want to explain something about the Enfield frame, or actually any frame where the engine's a stressed member. Now you may remember from those of you who watched the Indian one, with the twins and with the singles, if you have the centre stand which mounts on the engine plates, you can put the centre stand down, put a jack under the front of the engine, and then if you take all the frame bolts out, you can actually just take the frame off the engine and leave it standing there, and then you can put the frame back on later on. But we're not doing it like that. We're going to put the engine into the frame, and worse than that, in effect, we've got the wheels in and we've got it on straps. Now if you just have it like that, put the engine in and say put the rear bolts in so that all the weight's on this, the wheels will tend to move out a little bit and this will sag slightly. Now, you know, you're not going to end up with it being a banana, but what you'll find is the front mountings won't line up. You're going to have to sort of start to jack it up. So what I've done here, as you'll see, is I've actually put this on a block. The back wheel is loose, and I've put a jack here, so I'm going to stand the engine on that and then lower it down onto this rear mounting and then put the plates on. Just a minor thing, but something worth remembering. So let's see if you're in the right position for this shot. I might zoom you in a little. Yeah. Okay, here we go. Hernia time. Actually, finger trap time. There we go. Right. Come on now. Now we've dropped our little slotted one onto there. Go. Get some 5/16 ones. Boom, 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 boom. Just put these on loosely so that things don't fall off. Come on. Oh! Even now it's moved slightly. There we go. Okay, so let me put the rest of the bolts in and then we'll tighten it up and I'll move the jack and everything and we'll start to build up the top end. So this is what we're going to put on next, the start of the valve train. So the first thing that will go on will be the drive pinion on the end of the crankshaft. That's got a key to it, very small key. Then after that goes that which is the worm drive for the oil pump. Now the camshafts are marked up, I for inlet, E for exhaust, and on here we have 2 dots. On the exhaust we have 2 dots, so they go together. And then on this side we have 1 dot, 1 dot, so they go together like that. There's our 2 dots. There we go. Okay, that's going to be put together like that. So let's get these things put on. I'll put the woodruff key in. So then we put this on with our timing marks to the outside. Right, now I'm going to put a drop of blue Loctite on this. I've cleaned the threads up. And of course it goes on with the flats to the inside. You think that wouldn't be right, but don't forget this has got to go in and mesh with the worm drive, and it's also a left-hand thread. Now, let me pull you back a little, or I'll move you up and pull you back, both. What I've done is I've put an aluminium rod through there, so that'll lock that while we tighten this up. I need a thinner 3/4. I don't think. Well, I've got several 3/4, so hold on while I go thin this down. Yeah, right, that should fit. Alright, that's that one. That's fine. So now then, we've got a top dead centre. Why do they keep doing this? It's the same as the BSA ones. And I didn't think on. You screw that on and it covers the dots. Let me take it off and mark the dots and screw it back on. Well, I put some white marks on so I know where they are. So let's some oil in various places here. We'll oil these again later on, but this will all help. Okay, so E for exhaust, and we want the 2 to be there. One out. Okay, our 2 dots in the white slot. I for inlet, and there's our 1 dot. So there we go, 2 to 2, 1 to 1. So they're all on nicely. Right, now then, we will we'll put some studs in here. Actually, I think I'll put the piston on because it'll be easier to work at. Put the studs in and then we can do our barrel. Alright, piston. So, nice new piston. I've checked the rings in the grooves, and I've also checked the piston ring, the ring gap in the bore. What a little optical illusion there. I didn't think there was a front and back to these, but it looked as if one cutout was bigger than the other, but I measured them and they're identical. So there you go. Right, so let's some oil in there. Some oil on the pin. This actually is a sliding fit pin, so I don't have to heat the piston up. He says, and then of course it won't go in. Of course. Alright. Now then, we'll put a bit of cloth in there and we'll put the circlips in. I suppose I should have put one in one side, but I forgot. So I'll put the one in the other side, as I say, put a cloth there. And as I mentioned, that I'm doing this before I put the studs in, because it's a lot easier than trying to work around the studs. So you put one end in, make sure you absolutely keep your thumb on it and keep plenty of pressure on. If you've got incredibly strong fingernails, you can do it with them. But as I haven't, there we go. Let's get to the studs. Now, I didn't bore you with showing you all the studs, but I will show you them, this one, because the threads at one end are longer than the threads at the other end. They go into the case. We've got our lock nut on the top. I'm going to put a tiny bit of glue Loctite on for no other reason than I virtually don't have any left. And all these threads in the cases I've gone over with a a tap, and you can see how shiny these are. I used a dye on these as well. It's a lot easier when they just screw in with your fingers. He says. Alright, on the top nut, that one doesn't look 100% straight. Nice and tight. I've lost me where it is, and the reason I've still got the cloth in is because I don't want either of these nuts to drop down in there. Okay. That's those studs in. And then don't forget the one last little stud that goes in there. Again, longer threads at one end than the other. And you can't put two lock nuts on this, so my very last little bit of blue Loctite. That goes in there. Right, now we can put piston rings on. Now, you're all asking, why didn't I put, hang on, I had the, what's it on there, didn't I? Three-phase converter, I forgot. So, where was it? Oh yeah, you're all asking, why didn't I put the rings on before I put the studs in? And there is a very good reason why not. I forgot. So, these rings very nicely are marked on the top surface, so we'll put our oil scraper ring on. I hate doing this, always have. I probably count on one hand the number of rings I've had actually break on me, but you know, they're a bit fragile. Top. Then this one goes on, this compression ring. They're actually two different compression rings, and it says the shiny one, that's the actual term used, goes on the top. So there's that one, and I'm doing my usual spacing here. If you're looking down on it that way, oil scraper ring groove, gap rather, goes at 6 o'clock. This one goes at 2 o'clock, and the shiny ring, where does it say top? Top, goes at 10 o'clock. Let me put it on and then I'll swivel it round. There we go. As I say, is going to go at 10 o'clock. Right, we'll take that out and we'll find something to support the piston. Right, got our base gasket on, greased and everything, and we've oiled the barrel. Now here's one of those things that I was ranting about at the beginning. You look in a manual and it's going to tell you about using a piston ring compressor, but who's got one of those? For a minute there, I didn't think it was going to go on. I hope you're noticing the length of the liner on this thing. One of the things about Royal Enfields, from the look of the barrel, you wouldn't think they were long stroke, but they really are, because the piston disappears down into the cases. And you're all saying, yeah, but look how easy it would have been with a piston ring compressor. See, there's the first one in. All you need is thumbnails. and a little bit of patience. There's the next one. And is that this stud being a bit awkward? Yep. Oh, there we go. Take our little spacers out. Put a bit of grease back on where boom. God, this is starting to look something like now. Okay, very good. Right, now we can think about push rods and cylinder head. It is now tomorrow morning, and when I walked up to the house last night, I'd had a delivery. So we've got our nice new rock shocks. Oh, a couple of washers. Pop off. In there. Now come on, I've just run a die down these threads. There we go. So, doesn't that look swish? Right, I'll put the other one on and then we'll get back to cylinder head. So we come to the head, and there's a couple of things I want to show you here. I've put the new valves in. The guides were really good. With the new valves there was no play, so I've got new valves and springs, and Steam Shop reground the valve seats because they change a little bit with use. But a couple of things to show you on this. I got a decompressor for it, which goes in there. Now, unlike some decompressors where when you open it, it just vents to atmosphere, this one vents through that little hole. And that little hole connects to that little hole there. That goes through a passage which comes out into the exhaust port just behind the valve seat. So there's that. So there's two, as you can see, there's two seals on this. One right at the bottom and one on the shoulder there. So that's and that's relieved so that you don't have to actually line the holes up. There's space for the gas to get round. Right, the other thing about these heads is that you'll see there's no rockers on them. That's because the rockers are mounted in blocks. The block bolts on there, like so. There's the end that's going to go on the push rod. And there's the piece for the valve. So because of that, what we're going to do is we're going to put the head on, then we're going to drop the push rods in, and then we'll put the rockers on. Okay, so gasket first, and these are the new improved gaskets according to Hitchcock's, and funny enough they're made in the USA. So that on. Now because it's a fibre based gasket, I'm going to put a smear of grease on. Obviously with a copper gasket I wouldn't, although there's no reason why you can't, but I'm always always thinking about if ever I have to take this off, I don't want to have to spend forever scraping it off. So it's not a lot I'm putting on, just a smear. It might be just a smear to you, mate, but it's life and death to some poor soul. Or very close to that. Right. There we go. Now the head bolts, there's 4 of them, are really long ones that go down onto there. And there are also very small but thick, as always, washers. Now then, I think what we'll do here is we'll put a blob of grease. I've greased the threads, but we'll put a blob of grease on there. And then stick the washer on that. Down we go. All right. Now then, I forgot to look up what the torque settings are for this, although once again I'm sure the vast majority of these were built up over the years without anybody thinking about torque. So I'm going to go to £20 because that's foot-pounds, because that's what the B50 is, well 18 to 20, and it'll get us sorted until I can go and check up what it should be. Oh, I forgot to mention, this alloy barrel, you could get 2 barrels. One was sort of an unworked one, and then there's another one which Hitchcock say they've done sort of 10 things to make it a better barrel. And one of them is on this side, they put a steel insert in instead of, apparently there was a helicoil in there. So yesterday, just before I knocked off, I'm getting things ready. And I'm down if I could find a bolt that would screw in. I had no idea what thread it was. I tried BSC, BSF, BSW, UNF, UNC, everything. And then I suddenly thought to myself, wait a minute. Most of Hitchcock's new stuff is for the Madras built ones. So I got an 8mm bolt. And that fitted, would you believe? So, okay, we put those 4 in. Then there is a shorter one, which goes on this 5th one here. Like thus, and then round this side, as I say, we have an 8mm bolt. Fortunately I had a stainless steel one, so I've been able to turn the head a little bit and make it nice. Then that one goes in there. Right, now I thought I was going to be going down in there, but I'm not. So we'll start these and do the usual crisscross sort of pattern. I'll start in the centre and work my way out. Oh, and of course I'll need a different size socket for this 8mm bolt. Anyway, I won't bore you with this. Let me torque these down and then I'll come back. Now I'm going to put the decompressor in next just to fill the hole up. I've put a spark plug in the plug hole so that nothing drops in. Now you can buy them in bits, or as I did here, I bought it all in one, but you've still got to take it apart to get the cable on. So we've got to put that in the slot, screw that on there. Then it's got to go in there. And the actual decompressor part goes in there. The reason I took this top piece off is it was proven impossible to get the collet out. So there is somewhere, where's it gone now? There it is, still in the pliers. A split pin to hold the plunger into this collar at the top. So that goes in. You know, the more I watch the videos, the more I'm getting paranoid about covering things up with my hands. So anyway, hope you can see all of this. So that goes on there, and the spring goes over. Then this collet goes into there underneath the brass piece that we screwed the cable into. Make sure you're still in view, because I know I'm wobbling all over the place here, but this is a very awkward thing to do. Again, three-handed job. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to put my hand that way to get this in. God, come on. Just got to get it onto that little... There it is. Whoa. There we go. And when the cable pulls, when the cable pulls, it pushes that off its seat. I can't get enough leverage on the end without the actual lever on. So that's how it works. Alright, then as I say, we have two of these. One goes on the top, one goes on the bottom. So let me screw this in and then we can get on to putting the rockers on. I show you this because it's one of those times when all your fancy spanners and sockets and stuff won't work, and the only thing that's going to fit on is a good old box spanner. So I'll do that. Can't even get the Tommy bar in properly. Tighten it up and then we'll move on. First thing to go in are the push rods, and another Royal Enfield thing. The valve adjustment is actually at the bottom, not at the top, which is what this little window is for. And you'll also notice that this tappet is lower than that one, so you'll see that the two push rods are different lengths. So we'll put the long one down to there and the shorter one down onto there. Now the next thing are the rocker blocks, and you'll also notice here that they're not split in the middle. The smaller part goes to the top. So let's put some oil in there. That goes on like so. Ow, got my finger stuck there. Okay, so let me fasten this down. I got a little bit ahead of myself there in the explanation. I didn't tell you how the rockers are lubricated, because normally what you see, like BSA's, Triumphs, all the rest, is there's a feed. Because this shaft is in the head, there's a feed at the end. But what happens here is, you'll see when we go back to the head, the oil feed goes into the head on either side, and then it comes up through a hole and it goes through that hole there, which is another reason why you've got to have them that way up. Then comes up through that hole, goes into this sort of galley here, and then that just spreads out and lubricates that. Okay, the little cutaway there actually is where the head nut comes up. Alright people, deja vu. You remember last episode I mentioned 2 steps forward, 1 step back. I went to put the block on here and the holes didn't line up. I thought, that's strange. So I'm looking at them. I guess I hadn't noticed because I was talking to explain things. This is the right rocker, but it's the wrong rocker block. That is an exhaust one. See how it's got the cutaway, the one for the push rod? That should go on there. Like that. So I thought, okay, there were 3 blocks with the 2 engines. So I rushed off to get the other block, and guess what? It's another exhaust block. So I went online to Hitchcock's, and guess what? Guess what? They have exhaust blocks not available for the inlet block. But fortunately they're having these made, so I can get a pair of blocks with rockers, and actually they've got little O-rings in them as well. They're a sort of updated version. I think it's 35 quid for the pair. So I'll have to order them, which means we've come to a standstill here. And also I think this is long enough for a video, so we'll knock off now. I'll show you one other thing. Let me zoom you in. There's the oil feed for the rocker, you see, and there's that hole. So the oil goes in there, comes up and into the rockers. Okay, so let me order that, and that'll take more than a week. So next time I come out, we'll do something else on the bike. Maybe put the mudguards on, something like that. Alright, so until then, go and enjoy yourselves.